Lou Gehrig's sufferer Gloria Taylor didn't live long enough to see her case resolved in the courts or in Parliament. But today's BC court verdict is another legal step in the path to resolve the question of when can a person decide their right to die through suicide with the help of a doctor. Mike Preston is a lawyer with McLean and Armstrong. He's in Vancouver. Welcome to the show again, Mike. Let's refresh our memories a bit on this, if you could. Who was Gloria Taylor, and how did her case get to where it is today?
Well, Don, as you mentioned in your introduction, Gloria Taylor suffered from Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a very debilitating and at times painful disease. What she did is she got together with a number of other people who were suffering similarly, as well as groups like the BC Civil Liberties Association, and they started a court action to challenge the criminal laws that prevented doctors from assisting her in getting suicide.
Okay, so we went through one court where, as I recall, they actually ditched the government's ban on doctor-assisted suicide, so it ended up to the appeals court. What happened today?
Well, that's absolutely correct. So the trial judge said we have to ditch these criminal laws because the Charter protects the right for an individual to make that decision for themselves. The government wasn't particularly happy with that result, so they appealed to our British Columbia Court of Appeal. Now, 3 judges sit on that panel, and today we found out what those judges thought about this whole issue. 2 of them said, look, we'd love to help you, but our hands are tied by an old Supreme Court of Canada decision from 20 years ago. The 3rd judge says, well, our hands may be tied, but these ropes are actually a little bit loose, and I can wiggle out of those ropes. And that judge found that at a point where the suffering becomes so unbearable and the disability so strong, it is within the right of an individual to make a decision for themselves if they want to carry on.
All right, so we've got to this point. What's next?
So what comes next is it's already been announced by the BC Civil Liberties Association that they are going to ask the Supreme Court of Canada for permission to take the case to the Supreme Court of Canada and argue it there. And I have to say, looking at a lot of these decisions, you often hear people say, well, we're going to take it to the SCC. That usually doesn't mean that they're going to be heard there, because it's up to the SCC to decide if they want to hear it or not. But in this case, I've rarely seen a case so clearly destined for the SCC.
Okay, so we get to the Supreme Court and it says, yeah, a person's charter rights include doctor-assisted death, and Parliament refuses to change the criminal code to reflect that. What happens? Who wins?
Well, just to be clear, I mean, you're talking about a hypothetical that could happen about 2 years down the road. So let's say that the Supreme Court of Canada does hear this case, and then they do find that there is a right to die in Canada. Well, at that point, the government is going to have to amend the laws, because judges would not enforce those laws. So let's say in your hypothetical, the government says, well, we're keeping the laws on the books. That's fine and dandy. The government can do that. But anytime they try and enforce those laws, it's got to go through a judge. And a judge is going to listen to the SCC, not to the politicians in Ottawa on this issue.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. Okay, well, just given the current Supreme Court lineup, Stephen Harper's appointed, 3/4 of them. Do you expect these judges to look like they want to change that 20-year-old Rodriguez ruling that said no to this? Is the court more liberal, or is it likely to stick with the old ruling?
To be honest, Don, I'm not really in a position to comment on the politics of judges, even though it would be hard-pressed for anybody to say they don't have politics. What I can say is that largely because of the recent appointments made by the current government, this is a very different court than there was in 1993. And if anything, this court would probably be, looking at the composition, more likely to say there is no right to die and would uphold the government laws. So just back up a little bit. Back in 1993, 5 judges said there is no right to die. 4 of them said there is a right. So it was close. Now this court seems to have swung even more towards the no right to die. But having said that, in 20 years, public opinion has really changed. So look at the 4 judges that have heard this so far. There's been the trial judge and the 3 judges of the Court of Appeal. And all of them have said, if it was up to us, we would recommend that there is a right to die in very specific circumstances. But ultimately, we're going to have to wait probably a year or 2 from today to find out if the SEC has, in fact, changed its mind since the last 1993 case.
All right, Mike Preston, we'll book you for a year or two down the road when this thing comes down. Appreciate you joining us now.
Thank you, Don.
All right.